Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video, a continuation on the series on hemostasis. So now we're going to be doing part 2. So let's take a look at what we're going to look at in this video. The first thing I want to do is go over and just look at a basic overview of the blood vessel structure and see what's going on there. Then we're going to talk about, be focusing today on the vascular phase of hemostasis, the first phase, where we're going to look at what's called a neurogenic reflex and a myogenic reflex. And then we're going to look at how blood vessels are different when they are normal versus when they're damaged, and see what goes on between these two different vessels and how they might go on and behave differently, which will be looking at that neurogenic myogenic reflex and looking what happens at the signaling that goes on. So let's start off, and first off, let's really look at the overall structure of a blood vessel. And we're going to start off by drawing a circle, and on this circle, what we're representing here is the outermost layer of a typical blood vessel, or the outermost tunic, called the Tunica Externa. And Tunica Externa being the connective tissue layer that would be associated to blood vessels, and they will have this, and many blood vessels will be very thick. And then we'd have that Tunica Externa. And then under that, we would have another layer of tissues that also would be visible or associated. Let me erase this and clear that up, make that a little bit better. That would be underneath that. And this being the tunica media, being made up of smooth muscle or involuntary non-striated muscle tissues, which would be made up in the tunica media. And then lining this, you would have a simple squamous epithelial lining that is the tunica intima. And the lining is made up of what we call endothelium, and that is something important we talked about last lecture on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, in this idea that we have our lumen here where the blood is flowing in the lumen, gives us an idea how blood vessels are organized. So what we're going to do is start off by looking at a normal blood vessel and then a damaged blood vessel, and look at the reflexes that go on associated to it. So let's take our normal blood vessel where we have this thing fully intact, where our endothelial lining is intact and doing the job now that it's supposed to do. Now, one of the things I mentioned in my first video is how do we keep unwanted clots? And a few things we talked about is that normal healthy cells, for one thing, when a platelet is coming through and wants to adhere, it cannot do so because we have endothelium intact and they cannot stick to that. Also, we have the release of things like nitrous oxide, which is a molecule that acts as a vasodilator that helps to increase the amount of blood that flows and doesn't reduce blood flow. And we also saw a molecule called PGI2, or prostacyclin, which is a type of prostaglandin produced. These both active to be vasodilators and allow the blood vessel to stay relaxed. We also talked about heparin being produced by cells, tissue plasminogen activator, and also the molecule called thrombomodulin that all prevented blood clots. But here let's focus on the vasodilators, because what we're looking at today is vascular phase. And the vascular phase is vascular spasm. It's the first phase of hemostasis, the first thing that's going to happen. So vasodilation, and among other things, keeps the blood flowing normally, happily, and healthily, right? Now, what we're going to see is what happens upon the injury. So here I've got my normal endothelium, happy, healthy, doing what it's supposed to do. But an injury occurs, and as this tissues become injured endothelial cells, the blood that's inside the lumen will begin to flow out as we are losing blood and losing blood volume. This loss of blood is going to begin to need to be stopped, and that's when we said we needed hemostasis. Now what's happened is this damaged cell is these damaged endothelium are going to start to release a molecule that's a vasoconstrictor called endothelium, right? And this endothelium acts to constrict the blood vessels. So what would kind of happen here is as the blood vessel begins to narrow down during a vascular spasm, this starts to reduce that blood loss, and it gets reduced, right? Its endothelium is a vasoconstrictor, and that's going to constrict down, right? Now, also, what's occurring here is any of the muscle tissues associated in the tunica media is also damaged. And that damage, the release of various molecules, will start to release chemical signals to also contract the muscle. And this results in what is called a myogenic reflex, because the muscle itself initiates that reflex. Now, also with any tissues here, we have neurons attached to it, and these neurons release various neurotransmitters, and one that we're going to see is norepinephrine and epinephrine. These are our constrictors, and these constrictors would also help to create a vascular spasm. This being called a neurogenic reflex, because our blood vessels are being stimulated by neurons, and this is going to cause a strong vascular spasm. Now, the injury that has occurred here can be resulted by a few things that can cause this type of injury. Let's say, guys, that I've had trauma, right? Radiation damage, right? Radiation. I've had some drugs that would have damaged blood lining, burns, and also tubes that have been put in my body. Maybe they put a cannulus, an IV, or some kind of tube that also damaged this, and that can damage me from the inside as well. And the goal of this is to reduce blood loss. But we're going to see that this ragged edge that's right here that we could see at the injury is going to play a major role in the next phase called platelet phase. So I hope you're excited to see that. But this is by far the simplest phase that we see that would result in vascular spasm that begins to maintain the prevention of blood loss for a time. And then we're going to see that this isn't good enough, we can't keep it this way. We're going to see that we're going to add some platelets to that, and then we're going to coagulate that as well. So guys, this concludes our video on part 2 of hemostasis, the shortest video in the series, but I sure hope that you continue watching in all of these, and look forward to hearing your comments and what you guys have to say about it. And please take time to subscribe and just let me know what it is you would like to see in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.